Carlos Nelson with Cascade Sports. And tonight on a different segment, our Coach's Corner segment, we have a special guest coming out of Wichita, where he did most of his play and coaching at a high school level. Now he's at, what school are you at?
Garden City Community College.
Garden City. Who do we have here?
Antwain Scales, Garden City women's basketball head coach.
Hey, Antwain, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Go back to your grade school per se. Talk about when you fell in love with the sport, and name some of the coaches and people that were instrumental in shaping who you are today.
Well, first and foremost, honestly, I started out as a football player and then converted to basketball, but, just growing
up.
Talk about
that journey with football. I'm saying this is your story so that players, scouts, universities, they can look at this interview and they can know who you are for real.
Yeah, well, I actually am a native of Woodstock, Kansas. I'm actually started Little Leagues, Coach Sidney Dixon from, Woodstock coach football growing up as adolescents and, being taught the fundamentals of
what grade did you start that in?
Third grade coach, Wichita, yeah. Those were some good days. I actually started out playing tight end. They had me on the line and my brothers kind of gave me some flack like, man, what you doing on the line, man? You big enough, you need to play quarterback. And so following year, going to fourth grade, I went and told Coach Sidney, I want to play quarterback. And he kind of laughed at me at first, like, you're not a quarterback. You're going to be my tight end. And I said, no, I want to play quarterback, coach. And so from the beginning, he didn't have me starting. And pretty much by about a week into practice, he knew I was going to probably be a natural for quarterback. And the rest was history as far as quarterback. I was probably, top recruited quarterback coming out of the state of Kansas. Had a lot of
talk about let's since you talking talk about your high school career from your freshman year.
Freshman year, I played at Wichita South High School. We actually went undefeated as freshmen. Had an undefeated season. Sophomore year, I ended up getting a starting role as varsity quarterback. Actually had some great years. Actually went 9-1, won City League championship. Lost in order to go to state, and just from that, my career blossomed as far as being a quarterback there at Wichita South.
In your senior year?
Senior year, I ended up transferring. I transferred from Wichita South to Wichita Heights High School.
Why did you transfer?
Why did I transfer? Honestly, I ended up having a kid, and my grandmother was very old school. And, she said, well, you're going to, indulge in that kind of activity. You're not going to stay in my household. And so, honestly, I ended up moving in with my aunt. My aunt actually took me in. And
you grown.
Yeah. So she told me, you got your hat, get your coat too. I ended up going.
Hey, Coach, how the stories that we tell on our way to success, yeah. And the strong women that have been behind us. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I ended up going to Wichita Heights. I had always been a dual sport kid. So playing football and basketball was always a priority for me, but I kind of had got the win at South too my senior season that they, back then you got to remember, South growing up, it was a tough school. They deal with kind of
talk about what era, what your timeline was.
This had to be 93, 94, but the era from 92 to 95 was Wichita South. But they dealt with forced busing, if you can remember them days back then. kind of taking all the kids from a different urban neighborhood and busing them and, sending them down
Well,
south.
check this out. I'm 70, right? And I come from New York when all that stuff first started, and they was busing us from Queens almost into Manhattan, the edge of, and it was all white community that they were busing us into.
Exactly.
And what that's like. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was tough, especially, coming from a urban environment and, going into a situation with, or a school that was predominantly Caucasian, we were the minority. And then, so it was kind of tough as far as you wasn't truly accepted unless you played sports in a sense.
What kind of adjustments did you have to make? And my next question, because Cascade Sports is not being known as home of the student athlete, what type of academic adjustments did you have to make if you weren't, what kind of student were you?
I was a great student. I was a 4.0 student actually in high school. The curriculum, actually is pretty much when we went to South, it's advanced. You have to really be on the educational side. This is the first time I ever found out that about being able to be a qualifier. I didn't know that prior to going to, high school and really knowing that you had to take the ACT and truly qualify in order to move on to a Division I, Division II school. So that was an eye opener for me as far as academics was concerned. But of course, I ended up passing the ACT. The unfortunate thing is going, my senior year, I ended up, breaking my ankle. So I lost a lot of my Division I scholarships and ended up signing with Garden City Community College, which was a top 3 team in the nation at that time.
What would uh, on that note, tell these young athletes about that experience, how you can go from number 10 down to 0, and the experience with these coaches, what they'll say to you when they recruiting you versus what's the real deal is.
Well, the reality is, until you actually sign your letter of intent, the verbal commitment either way is non-guaranteed. And so a lot of times athletes think that once they sign a letter of intent or get a verbal commitment that their job is done, but truly it's only just begun. And so I kind of found that out as far as going through my senior season and thinking that I was going to be a Division I prospect, and then having that unfortunate injury happen and say, now I hadn't even really looked at the junior college ranks, and now these becomes my options overnight.
All right. So talk about your stint there, your 2-year stint at the junior college.
Well, honestly, I ended up going to Garden City for 1 year. And within that year, I ended up, not being away from home, kind of like, being sheltered in a sense because we came from a close-knit family, 3.5 hours away from home. I became homesick. And so I transferred, then going back to Wichita State. I didn't even really truly understand quarterback controversy then. And so when I was at Garden, there was a guy named John Elder. He ended up coming back to Garden City. During that time in '95, he backed up Brooke Behringer and Tommy Frazier when they was in Nebraska and won a national championship. So automatically he comes back to Garden, and just political aspects of it, I felt like I was a better athlete, but they moved me to receiver. Man, I hadn't played receiver before. It was an adjustment, but they was telling me you're a good enough athlete. We just want to keep you on the field and your time is coming. But young and not making great choices, I was indecisive in my decision and ended up going back home in a sense. And ultimately ended up going to Independence Community College where I played and under Bob O'Mara there and transferred. You got to remember when they talk about that segment, Last Chance U, both of those teams, Garden City and Independence, it was unique because I ended up playing for both of those schools.
What did you learn in your experience that you can transfer in this interview to some young people?
Just honestly believing in yourself and having perseverance. It's more importantly the ultimate confidence. When you transfer or when you feel that your worth isn't what it should be, it can honestly psychologically get you down. And you understand coaches in an indirect way, they have a unique key to your success, whether they can make you or break you. And junior college was tough back then. I mean, so Being able to withstand that and go through the psychological aspects and fight moving forward to actually be able to perform, it was a blessing within itself for where I wound up and where I was at.
All right. When you when took your next step, what's the next school you went to?
Actually from Independence Community College, being that I mentioned that I had a child.
Mhm.
So being the aspect of being a man in society and being productive to make sure that my child knew who her father was, number one, and two, being able to support, I ended up coming back and just getting a job, So I ended up coming back, getting in aviation and working, and I worked different jobs until I got hired as Cessna aircraft in 99, 2000. And from that point, I ended up doing aviation contracting. And then I got a phone call from Mike Moore. He was the head coach at Bethel Christian College in North Newton, Kansas. And said, Scales, I know you've been out for a minute, but we need a quarterback. And so, I had to contemplate, do I really want to go back to school? I ended up going back to school in 2002. Considered old man on campus, being that those kids was younger, but actually went back, started performing, did pretty well in the KCAC.
What because we're on Coach's Corner, talk about at least four of those coaches from the time you started that, and what did you get from them, and how do you perceive being a coach?
Well, uniquely within itself, it didn't even really start from coaches that truly coached me. A couple of them did, actually the Sidney Dixon was one of the first coaches that truly believed in, and so that was my little league football coach. To going to high school playing for, one of the legendary coaches is Steve Eck at Wichita South High School, it really brought the era of discipline to the table as far as being accountable and being fundamental. I also been that, my late uncle Henry Jackson and then my uncle Marvin Coleman, where they both were started, they had always coached youth little league teams and things of that nature. And so when Coach Coleman actually became on the Southeast coaching staff with Coach Carl Taylor, the late Coach Carl Taylor, I really understood the discipline aspects of grades. I used to hear him tell stories about kids, if they didn't have the academics, they would not play at all. He don't care if you had a C. He wasn't playing you. He wanted you to be an A, B student. And so those are all the aspects and prodigy that I really truly took from what those coaches instilled in me up until my senior year at Woodstock Heights in the late Coach Goose Dowdy. He always would start practice with words of wisdom, and he always wanted us to really truly be divine and to think outside of just basketball. What are you going to do with your life? What are going to be the key points moving forward? I always have a strategic plan in action, and so I always took those words of wisdom. So it's been multiple coaches that have truly shaped my life beyond just the aspects of playing for some of them.
Right. I like that to a degree that you stop with your education. You seen what that was like, and you got up and you dust it off and do what you do, and that is what sports in general teaches you for the athletes that are paying attention. Sports is like life. You win some, you lose some. There's always another play. And the more you practice at your craft, the better you're equipped to deal with different situations. So, with that being said, when did you start your coaching career?
Um, Coaching career, it was about 2004, 2005. I had a youth team. I actually got really kind of called out in the coaching on accident. My daughter played for a team that they truly wasn't given the right and correct fundamentals. And we went to a little MAYB tournament and watched my daughter get blew out. And the coach was telling the coach to call off his press. And the coach looked at him like, what? And he threw his hand at him and said, you coach a team. And so they got into a kind of a verbal argument. And so afterwards, when the parents kind of gather up and you're talking, he basically was bashing the coach that just told him, man, coach your team. And so I stepped up and I said, that coach is absolutely right. We don't work on things in practice with fundamental. This is serious. We paying money. We traveling. This is serious with basketball. And the coach said, hey, well, if you feel like you could do better, why don't you get your own team? And so I did. And our team, actually, I started the Dream Team organization, which with Terry Moore, we share in common. Terry Moore was actually on that team. We ended up winning a Biddy National Championship in 2008, and then it ended up repeating again in 2010. So that's kind of how I really truly got started, Coach. And Dream Team organization is the organization that I founded and started. My brother actually and his friend started that organization prior to me. And so it was an adult league basketball team that I really incorporated the youth side of it in as well.
And then how did you start coaching at with Garden City and what have you? I'm saying.
Well, I ended up going from Biddy basketball. I actually got the Brooks Middle School job in Wichita, and so in 2010 to 2012, we had two undefeated seasons at Brooks Middle School, and so from Brooks, I ended up getting the head coaching job at Wichita South, which was actually a school that I went to. They had won 2 games in 3 years prior to me coming there. And so taking over that program was scary in a sense because I really hadn't coached at the high school level, but it was a task that I was truly up for. And,
how many years did you coach there?
7 years. I was there 7 years.
What kind of record?
178-13 in 7 seasons. 82-0 at home. We never lost a home game. 4 state consecutive championships, 6 league titles. And like I said, in 2015, I was National High School Coach of the Year. So we had a pretty good career there with me.
All right. Coach, now I want to get into your feelings. Talk about winning that award. And what did that mean to you? What did it mean to your family? And what did it mean to your players as coming from your viewpoint?
Well, it was bittersweet in a sense, because the whole aspects of that is that, when I won the award, they truly did. I didn't even know. I was scaling the internet, and I was scaling the internet because I was, you look for like lost treasures and things of that nature. You can put your name in to see if you win anything. And I Googled my name, and it stated I had won National High School Coach of the Year, and they never bothered to tell me. And so I found out maybe 3 or 4 months after I won that award. And so it was kind of bittersweet for me. It was tough because I couldn't understand why, with such a big notoriety with winning that award, it wasn't really disclosed to me. And my coaching career, it always had controversy in the sense of knowing that, hey, when you win, they say you recruit, or if you always had good players. It's never the fact that coaching ability or bringing the talent together or really truly working hard was never to discredit those young ladies. We worked extremely hard, but it's always discredited when you do it and how you do
it. Hey, Coach, now I want you to talk about coaching women's basketball.
As far as college, in a sense?
Yeah, just in general. A lot of people say, want to say men and women is the same. It is the same. The sport's the same, but I think from a psychological standpoint and how you approach them, is that different or what? Talk about that from your perspective.
My philosophy has always been, I've been able to coach both sides. I've coached some talented young men as well as young women, but my motto on the women's side is always trying to teach a girl to play like a boy. And when I say that in the sense, it's that, just the discipline, integrity, everything that goes into really working hard every single day. If you can get those young women to buy in just as much as the guys do, you're going to have major success.
All right, now let's move to what's your record there?
Garden City, right now in year 1, we ended up, we had COVID season. So we ended up being 14-9 over in this COVID season, this past season. But Winning season thus far.
Mention some people that our audience might want to look out for this year, because we'll be doing a couple of Zooms with you with some of your players. Talk about 3 of your players.
3 of our players. I got to return to sophomore. Her name is Justice Odom. She's pretty tough. She's from Indianapolis, Indiana. Kid who really didn't get highly recruited out of high school, but 100% believed in me and said, "Coach, I want to be a part of what you're building." A couple of her friends went to another JUCO in the Kansas in the Region 6 JL conference, but she chose to really truly come for me because she really bought in the fact that the recruiting. We kind of had similar lifestyles in a sense as far as how I grew up and how I was raised, and she wanted to be a part of that. I ended up getting a Division II transfer, and Ashley McCory, who transferred from Pittsburgh State. She came back to be a part. She was actually a Wichita kid, so we played against her in the 4 years that I was at Wichita South. And she said, "Coach, I always admired how you coached and how hard your teams played, and I wanted to be a part of that." And then last, Peyton Hicks, who was actually a Division I transfer from University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Her and Alexis Smith actually run a point guard for us in this backcourt this season. So I'm pretty excited of what it holds for our team this season.
What conference are you in?
We're in the Jayhawk Conference, Region 6. Really tough conference. We're in the Jayhawk West, and Jayhawk West, if you really know on a national level, every night you got to bring it. It's a tough conference. Probably 3 to 4 teams can make it to the national tournament out of our conference alone. It's a tough grinding conference.
How do you feel the media covers girls and women's sports in general?
For me, honestly, it's kind of tough because, everybody glorify the guys, but these girls work just as hard, and sometimes they don't get the recognition that's truly deserving. I really did. They go out and you knew the coverage of the NCAA tournament, as far as, not to really put nobody out there, but just the resources that the men had versus the women is really kind of tough. And that's not one-sided. That's happening dimensionally all over. And
it's pathetic that they even have to bring that up to get the attention.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. And it's unfortunate, because, again, these young ladies do a lot of sacrificial things to make sure they're successful academically and athletically, and they truly need the resources to be successful also.
Well, here at Cascade Sports, basically, this is going to be the year of the woman and the girls that we're going to give extraordinary coverage to our women and our girl athletes, and we're going to be paying homage to the mothers, the thousands of mothers that are really handling the load with biddy leagues, middle school, and all of that, in addition to their motherly duties. Cascade Sports is taking our hat off to them. So, with the winding up, are there any closing comments that you would like to impart to our audience?
Just always value the education aspects of school. I always tell our young athletes here that, that era is going to go out there basketball at some point in time or another. Here at Garden City, we had 8 people that was academic, we received 4.0 academic accolades as far as here. And so here we truly drive and home at the importance of education. And again, it's only going to be a certain period of time we're going to be there to utilize athletic ability, but we promote great people beyond the aspects of just basketball. And I truly define myself as a life coach, not just a basketball coach. And that goes hand in hand with the young women that are truly come here to be a part of what we build.
Hey, Coach, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And as we say in closing all the time, when you invest in your community, you really just are investing in yourself. But when we're dealing with this hard ball, we always say, Cascade Sports, we go hard in the paint. And I mean, we go hard.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.